I'd like to start with a poem. I didn't grow up in London. I grew up in a thumb offshoot of the Slad Valley in the heart of Laurie Lee country. And the first poem is very much about that, that landscape. It's called A House Built from Cloth. I grew up in a house built from cloth, played in the ruins of cottage industry, old stones like teasel teeth chewing at my feet. Fragments of industry, their lime-wash white faded to a smoker's gold. I grew up in a valley stretched over stone like cloth, rolled footballs and roller skates over sheep-felted grass, built locks in the stream under the old trade road. I grew up in a landscape where hedges and dry stone walls ran through the fields like seams, where the past was a runic language, stitched, dyed and woven into oracular hills. Time settles like ordered cloth in these valleys, catches itself red-handed as it is folded back. I grew up watching the past pulling the weight of the future along the canal's linear thread. The next poem is my earliest memory, and it goes right back into that house. It's a memory of my mother. It's called Cheese Kisses. In a bright kitchen, the colour of custard, the black cats curling out a yawn on the long pine table, spread for the beginnings of a meal. The oven is hot and creaking. My mother turns to it, dons her striped blue and grey apron. Hair hides her face as she bends to check the baking, all but her eyes, which laugh at me. A knock at the door. "Come in," she calls. Bill swings in smiling, the muck of gardens on his boots. She turns, rests against the cooker, greets him warmly. "You still away?" asks Bill. A nod, hair bobbing, and a smile. I watch in silence as the game begins. Too young to call it flirting. All I know is that I've been sidelined. I watch, jealous, tease the cat. There is fire suddenly. Her apron strings have caught on the hob. My mother's backside is on fire. Bill swings her round, slaps. The fire goes out. There is silence in the kitchen. But for my laughter, asking for the trick to be worked again. Bill leaves quickly. Out of the oven come cheese kisses, which melt in my mouth only. Thank you. Next poem is a hangover poem. It's called Dandelion Clock. Starch-tongued morning, the pub floating like brassy nirvana in the ache of memory. A dressing gown wraps the day in soil and grass. Beetles crawl from the showerhead, eager to escape the bathroom, find a blazing ball of dung to roll up into the sky. I stretch like a wind-racked tree, the marrow creaking in my bones. Outside, someone has thrown a toilet roll across the sky. Body dressed, eyes unbuttoned, paracetamol leaping in my blood like unboxed Jack, I slam through the door and drift away into beds of flowers. Hellebore skulk by the wall, waiting hangdog as hunted royalty for their last cigarette. Butter-naveled primroses simper in clusters, bobbing their heads above green newspaper leaves. White stars I cannot name blaze on mossy stone. St. David's heralds stoop into April. One dandelion clock remains from yesterday, fragile and unticked. I regard it cautiously, not sure yet whose head will dissipate first. Thank you. I'll read two more poems to finish. One, since there's a theme, is a Riot poem. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to read it off Flash Technology because I didn't bring it on paper. This poem started with the title, which came from, I don't know if any of you will remember the Ted Hughes book, How the Whale Became, myths about the creation of animals. So over the summer I thought, I sat there and this came out of the pen, How the Riot Became. They broke him down, watched his head jelly and collapse, his eyes film over, and his mouth pinch shut. And then they left. He lay silent in the gutter as his name was carried like a banner on the wind. The day's heat held itself in a fist of tarmac, waiting to become flame. People streamed like tears onto the street. He lay broken in a pool of blood, the city hissing at him through fiery teeth, shattered windows, the graffiti of anger and despair. Police and thieves screamed as one. Clothes and iPads danced away into the night. He lay silent in the half-dark, the city pounding hammers in his blood. As it absorbed him, grew a hard shell around his empty flesh. Like a cancer it flourished, feeding on him until even his name had shriveled up and died. And all that remained was a smashed jawline of buildings, a maze of glassy tears, a cold shadow on the streets. Thank you. And I'd like to close with it's a more cheerful poem, which is strange given that it's a memorial poem. It's in Memoriam Adrian Mitchell, who was one of my father's dearest friends, a fantastic poet, sort of an occasional poetry godfather to me. I once, rather gauchely, very young, sent him, he was working at the New Statesman at the time as the poetry editor, sent him some poems and forgot to put in a stamped address envelope. And Adrian, being Adrian, sent me a very nice, polite note back saying, next time, remember the envelope. But I also used to go occasionally to parties at his house with my father, and they were wonderful things. And when he died, I remembered these parties very fondly and thought, well, if there's such a thing as heaven, Adrian should be going to a party like one of his up there. So this is the welcoming party in Memoriam Adrian Mitchell. Beyond the lich gate, the expected churchyard is instead a garden, tumultuous and pungent with colour, apple trees mingling with cherries, a snowstorm of blossom, flowers. All the seasons are hopping together. Roses jive with sorrel, blushing young primroses take up proffered palm fronds and dance amongst the clouds. White trumpets of convolvulus blurt themselves blue. The poets and musicians are all here. Ginsberg jams on his harmonium with Lennon, Leadbelly and Tom Paine. Stevie Smith is waving from the lily pond. Ted Hughes looms like a cliff in the distance. Just inside the gate, William and Catherine Blake wait naked in wicker chairs, surrounded by the flesh-made word. Blake stands, extends a hand in welcome, as sun bursts from a page of memory, sings snatches of freedom with the voice of Lady Day. Thank you very much.